We're Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts. What makes us food shipping experts? Glad you asked. First, we've built a well-connected, highly reliable food-grade carrier network that significantly improves OTIF compliance, streamlines delivery management, and complies with food-grade requirements like trailer washouts and seal processes. We know what food shippers really need, a dedicated account team to offer critical after-hours support. Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts.
Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's Running on Ice, the newsletter that couldn't be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we welcome Dan Spitali, Vice President of Global Sales at UPS Capital. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks, Barry. Great to be here. I enjoyed last time. I'm pleased to be back. So thanks for the opportunity.
I'm excited for this. This is, we had you on check calls. We got to dive into kind of the reverse logistics on the dry van side of things. And now we're over on Running on Ice, the coolest community, if you will. And we're kind of getting into something that I'm not going to lie, I'm not super knowledgeable on. And that's kind of that reverse logistics as it relates to the temperature controlled side of things. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and how you got started at UPS Capital.
Yeah. So cold as ice. That's awesome. So I look forward to talking about that. But before that, so it's been a journey. This is year 25 with UPS. So I've been around for a minute. I've got an opportunity to do some pretty cool things, both on the UPS core side, in the small package world, sales, marketing, operations. And then the last 15 plus years here at UPS Capital, which is really the financial service arms of the business. We do a lot of logistics risk, package insurance, cargo insurance, formerly used to do some cargo and small business financing. And then most recently, over the past, say, 12 to 15 months, we've gone through an integration of multiple business units. So think of inventory intelligence, more of a digital SaaS-oriented 3PL, as well as orchestration and last mile with one of our other business partners. And then from a UPS Capital perspective, we've gone deeper into the multi-carrier, multimodal piece of insurance risk. So I've had the opportunity to be part of that in different capacities over the last 15 years, and currently in the role as the head of sales here for UPS Digital. And again, really excited to be back with you today.
I'm excited as well. I like that you've kind of taken that tour through just about everything that touches, like you've kind of touched a little bit of everything, and now it's all roped up into one. It's gonna be kind of nice. It's less scary, when you kind of are like, oh, I know the meaning behind everything.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's a gift and a curse sometimes, Mary, if I'm being honest. Just when you think you've seen it or heard it all, you get this new stuff that comes up in this digital world that we live in. Actually, some of which we're going to talk about today in reference to what do we do with temp controlled? How does it work? How's it good for my business? What problems does it solve? There's all kinds of new things that are happening. So I think it's a very appropriate conversation.
Well, without further ado, let's just jump in. Feet first. So I guess when it comes to, because obviously on the reverse logistics side, on the dry van side, it makes sense because, it's easier to do returns. It's easier to kind of collect things. It just makes sense because there's not necessarily that waste component to it where if something falls out of temperature, it's like, how do I go pick up a bunch of steaks that I've delivered? That seems a little trickier. So what are some of those most common industries where you guys are seeing those temperature controlled reverse logistics? Like, what are those ones that are needing these services the most?
Yeah, the two that really jump out would be perishables, which I'll unpack that a little bit. Give a couple of nameless customer examples that we have here at Capital from a risk side. But the big one, the UPS, FedEx, it's obviously publicly traded company, so it's not a secret. It's coming out in earnings calls and earnings reports. It's not even a double down on healthcare. It's like a triple down on healthcare. That is really That's the North Star when it comes to all things cold chain, at least from a vertical perspective. But, not to leave behind the original need, just dating back to some of the experience I've had on the small package and on the risk side. You think about the Omaha Steaks of the world. You think about the Factors and all these different companies that have come up with meals ready to eat, right? Like that's the world we live in. It's sped up even more in a digital world. The need for perishable risk coverage is greater than ever. We've been doing it for quite some time here at UPS Capital. We refer to it as time in transit coverage, day and time stamp, spoilage, all these different things. So it's been in play for a while, but not as prevalent as it is right now. Like anytime you're on a Instagram market, you could be on TikTok market. Everybody has these best in class meal ready to eats that they can ship to you, dry ice, whatever they might be using. But with that comes the perishable nature of what it is that they're shipping. So that still remains paramount. Healthcare is just, for obviously came to a height during COVID, right, with vaccines and things of that nature. It has just, it's quadrupled in capacity and market interest than that of perishables. But there's a healthy market for, perishable food products as well.
I mean, it kind of makes sense that healthcare is kind of that driving force because it's just, I think it's poised to just grow immensely over the next few years, just because, kind of that resurgence of, the like on the perishable side, you have those meal kits to home, for like meals that I can just heat up. People are looking for that level of convenience with their healthcare as well, especially for those that maybe have a terminal illness or have kind of chronic illness where instead of going to the doctor every week or every couple weeks for a blood draw, maybe I can just draw it myself at home and I can send my specimen in and kind of stuff like that. But I think it's kind of poised for that. And the one kind of advantage you have with a lot of these different healthcares or medical networks is that most of them are on something that resembles kind of a closed loop system. So they do have that need for those reverse logistics. Because I know that if I'm shipping X amount of medicine to one of my hospitals from a distribution center, I know that that box is going to come back to me or those products are going to come back to me. So I need to figure out how because there's a lot of really great sustainability movements that have been made of, reducing dry ice, improving packaging, reducing spoilage, all things that everybody wants. But how do I get those packages back to my DC so that way I can send them out on the next shipment? And I mean, like, that's kind of, you guys have to just slide in and be like, don't worry. We got it.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great summary. And when I say you, I'm speaking in broad generalities, but what you experience in all industries, but in particular this one, because of the time sensitivity of it, infrastructure issues. You don't realize how aged your infrastructure is until you start shipping time critical perishable shipments, in particular healthcare cold chain. That's one that we've had at least even in the month of March with some of our customers, multiple calls about. But with that is the transparency that people expect, the consumer expects from a lack of visibility. So you get aged infrastructure, outdated equipment, and with that comes, I have no idea what's happening until it gets delivered to me, and then you send me a delivery scan. Well, I already know it's been delivered because I just picked it up. What about everything in between the time that you ship it? So that's been a big thing as well. But then with it, with aged infrastructure, you start looking at, I don't know, maybe we can all agree on this. Documentation and follow-up in the healthcare vertical is not paramount, right? That is not what they do best. And what we see in the infrastructure is, in particular from a supply chain perspective, is it's equal parts there as well. So you get back to the transparency, the trust behind it. I mean, just getting a $100 Amazon package, it's difficult for the consumer to build that trust. So just think about what that's like when you have a life-saving vaccine with aged infrastructure and outdated equipment. And it's kind of like, you just didn't tell me what I needed to know from start to finish. So this is really where we start to see cold chain play off, because what it does is it preserves something that might otherwise go bad in 24 hours for an additional 24 to make up for the mistake that was made.
Because a lot of these, like, so there's like those, there's the, like, because this is everything from like Advil to like the customized gene therapy is that from the time they're made, they have to be like in a patient's body within 72 hours. And I mean, when you're hitting this demand, nothing's going to test that supply chain more than pressure. So if you're sitting there and, suddenly there's a huge run on flu and everybody needs flu shots or extra supplies to, kind of help with the symptoms of flu. You don't know that your supply chain is weak to these demand surges until you go through and you're like, oh, we have a problem. Our supply chain is not quite as limber as we thought it was.
Yeah, I think I mean, unfortunately, it's a lot more prevalent than probably as what is talked about in the market, and seeing how the sauce is made in the middle of all of this from a logistics side, but also a risk side. There's some stories that come of this that you would prefer not to have to hear about, because on the other end of this is a patient. It kind of leads into, what we started to do as far as integrating the business here at Capital with last mile orchestration, but also, more of a SaaS model for 3PLs, is that it's all about warehouse space closest to the delivery points. And this is a big piece of that as well. So you think about shortening the delivery move, orchestrating the last mile, but at the same time, you still have a cold chain play. And without it, you stand to lose not only a business, but I mean, you got a human life on the other end of it, to your point. So I think that's a great comment.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the difference between to me, one of the stark differences between most of the things that involve the cold chain and most of the things that are on the dry van side of things. An example that I love using is, it doesn't matter if my pair of jeans get frozen or get baked in the sun and they are like 120 degrees at some point in time, because when I still get them at the store, there's still going to be a pair of jeans. There's still going to be I'm still going to be able to use them. The quality, my life will not be negatively or positively impacted if my jeans got hot or cold in transit. However, if produce or like chicken gets frozen, thawed, that introduces some bacteria. If pharmaceuticals, if they fall out of temperature range, the chances of that hurting someone is higher than just if a pair of jeans, oops, they get left out in the Arizona sun and they got to 120 degrees. They gonna be fine.
No, I agree. And I appreciate you bringing up the perishable nature of this when it comes to food, because again, as I mentioned kind of early on, that piece of cold chain is sometimes lost in the shuffle because healthcare is so prominent out there, and rightfully so, right? Like you're saving lives and, maintaining lives. And at the same time, there are some repercussions for having something that if it needs to be delivered in 6 hours and delivered in 12 hours from a food perspective. I mean, not the place that you want to be. And the end consumer, I mean, it's not their responsibility to figure out the supply chain. They just want their shipment. They want to eat it, and they don't want to have to worry about sending it back or throwing it away. So I do appreciate you bringing that piece up, because the healthcare piece, I mean, I just listened to the FedEx earnings. They're doubling, tripling down on healthcare. For the last 3-4 years, you've heard our CEO, our CFOs talking about, the play is in the SMB and it's healthcare. It's no secret. That's where people are coming with, because there's just so much capacity in business to be had. And more than half of it is cold chain related.
Yeah. And as a consumer, I shouldn't have to walk up to my grocery store clerk and be like, were my bananas stored next to avocados? Because I don't want to get them if they've already been like ripening too quickly. It's just not something that consumers are going to care about. And honestly, the person stocking the shelf is going to go, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to give you the most honest answer they have. I don't know.
Or they're going to go, I just stocked the shelves, dude.
100%. I think it's, from a merchant perspective, and even you start looking at, you got the big healthcare companies, you got the the big three in the distribution, right? McKesson, you got Cardinal, Amerisource, but you have these smaller mom and pop type healthcare providers that are, they might be doing medical devices, or they could be doing COVID vaccines. Moderna is a perfect example. Moderna, like A lot of people heard of Moderna prior to COVID, but it was like the brand of all brands when all the vaccine stuff started happening. Their business quadrupled, and all of it was cold chain related. So you start to see the branding change, but from a merchant perspective, like they have to be able to solve for that because the capacity grows so quickly and demand is higher than it'll ever be again, hopefully. So that's some ways that, merchants are trying to tackle this as well. And that's where the UPSs and the FedEx come in.
I think because it seems like if I'm a brand and I'm a pharmaceutical maker, I probably have some cold chain pharma. I probably have some cold chain medicine. Same if I'm a produce supplier, I am already in the cold chain. How do I know that like what I have now is not necessarily working for me long term, and I might need to look at some other solutions? Like, what are some of those telltale indicators that say you're surviving, but you're not necessarily thriving, as the kids say?
Yeah, it goes to tech, right? Like the obsolescence rate in tech is, what was good last week isn't good anymore, and you're already dealing with a lot of, back to aged infrastructure, outdated systems. You start to even see it in the airline industry, and ironically enough, the industries are sometimes interconnected when it comes to cold chain. These things are being flown across the country with outdated infrastructure on the airline world, but also outdated infrastructure from the shipper or the healthcare company. So you got a double-edged sword there. But it really comes down to like the analytics behind it, right? Like what is the knowing what the obsolescence rate, like with an iPhone. I mean, the repeat business on an iPhone is when Apple tells you that there's a new one coming out, it's their way of saying it's obsolete and you should get it. Whether you believe that or not is a different story, but a lot of the healthcare companies don't have that level of tech set up for some of the most life-critical shipments that they can ship. So when you look at the analytics and behind it of what percent arrives on time, what percent has a potential delay, what percent has an actual delay, what is the delay? Where did the delay happen? So all of the analytics behind it should theoretically put the merchants or the shippers in much better place to at least make decisions based on data rather than just the gut. Because what you're talking about is real. You start a lot of outdated infrastructure across the entire, end-to-end supply chain is a recipe for disaster when it's most critical.
I think I saw something that like, this could be a completely butchered statistic, so don't quote it as gospel. But I saw something that like 60%, or no, maybe it's like 80% of cold storage warehouses are like 60 years or older. Like there's not a lot of like newer cold storage facilities out there compared to the availability of storage. And that's wild because I don't know if anyone knew, freight shipping in the 60s is a touch different than freight shipping now.
Yeah. FYI, right?
Just a little different.
It's very expensive. It's very expensive. It's also very niche, and ironically enough, who supplies them? Very niche. You would think there would be more out there. It's kind of like it's the chip makers, right? Like 5 years ago, everybody was wondering who NVIDIA was. Well, NVIDIA is all things Apple and Microsoft and Amazon and anyone else that needs these chips. Well, the same thing with cold chain. The suppliers are not as vast as what it might seem on the surface. So to your point, you have minimal suppliers, which obviously increases cost. And with that, on the receiving end of it, you have these warehouses from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that we expect to keep up in the 2020s, and it's just not realistic, and they're busting at capacity. I saw something else that was like, it's so much more expensive to either retrofit an existing cold storage warehouse, tear it down and rebuild it. It's like 2 times more expensive to do that than to just build a new one outright, which is why all of these old cold storage facilities are just kind of like going, like people are just letting them go because they're grandfathered into most of the different things, because you can't necessarily go in and change the whatever the spelled out version is for HFCs, the hydrofluoride
the things that keep things cold. I can never remember what that full word is, but you guys know what I'm talking about. You can't go in and necessarily change that without redoing the whole system, but you can't redo the whole system because the structure can't support it, or the electrical can't support it, or whatever it may be. It's like if you give a mouse a cookie, you need to just tear down an entire warehouse and build a new one.
Yeah. I think the other part of it too, Mary, is that back in the late 90s, even in the early 2000s, a big piece of shipping perishable period was dry ice. And there's a lot of like, UPS is a little bit more conservative than FedEx, but those are considered hazardous material kind of shipment. And that was the answer for everything. Well, how are you going to ship these food products? How are you going to ship these vaccines? Dry ice, dry ice. 9 out of 10 times you were going to get dry ice. And the one time that you didn't get dry ice was they didn't know. They need it. That's not as prevalent anymore, although there are some that still try to use it a lot. Because to your point, they don't have the capacity. There's no bandwidth. The cost is extremely high for them to potentially tear down and rebuild, even though that's the cheaper way. Like, let's continue to pack. I'm from Chicago and a big foodie, and it's a big customer of ours. Let's pack in Lou Malnati's pizza in dry ice and just go with it. That's not the play anymore. Unfortunately, it's what still continues to happen.
Well, because a lot of those, there's been a lot of advancements in those like dry ice replacements. We've talked about it a lot on the show, and it's much harder to, like, if I'm going to go as a shipper, go out and spend $10 for this thing that can keep something at negative 65 degrees Celsius, like I'm going to do that. But I don't want to send that out and not get that back, because then I'm just buying this when dry ice is cheaper to send it somewhere if I'm not going to get it, which is where that kind of closed loop system comes in of, okay, well, I have, for lack of a better word, I have these giant ice packs that can keep something at to whatever degree temperature I want it to be, as low as negative 60 degrees Celsius. And I can ship it out with my stuff. And then when I go make my delivery there on Tuesday, I take the old stuff, bring it back to the distribution center, freeze it again, and it's just reusable. That's a lot easier to do than, like you were saying, I'm not going to put that unit in a thing that I'm going to ship to a consumer and never see back.
Yeah. I think the other piece of this, and it's not really something that we've talked about here today, but as it relates to technology and how does the merchant, and ultimately how does the merchant protect themselves and ensure protection and transparency for that end receiver, from a tech perspective, is RFID. Right? So think about RFID in a cold chain world. They're almost counterintuitive because tech shouldn't be wet or cold. These are real things that we're trying all for now, because what happens in RFID is the RFID is embedded in the barcode of the labels. The labels are, you've seen them, they're stickers, except they're raised now, right? And this is something that you'll start seeing more from UPS as it relates into late 25, early 26. But now the challenge is you think about the industries that have a need for that kind of tech to grow transparency, and basically, anytime that package is, where it's at the whole time. You have perishables for sure, but you also have things like gold and bullion, high value, but the ones that want it are the same ones that want and need cold chain. It's healthcare. So now trying to figure out the RFID tech relative to cold and dampness, that's the next challenge that will ultimately hit the market.
I like it because electronics historically don't like moisture.
Yeah.
Extreme temperatures.
And these things are they're so small. They're so small, but it's tech.
Yeah.
And while it's embedded and slightly raised, you would think that it's immaterial, but it isn't. So these are the things that we'll do some testing on, and others as well, not just us, but that's the next challenge coming down the pipe as it relates to cold chain.
I like it. I'm excited for it. I can't wait to hear I can't wait to hear how your testing goes. I'm looking forward to something just getting like submerged in a vat of water and you guys just going, well, that didn't work. Let's try again.
A luxury watch, just drop it in the pool and it's supposed to come out okay, right?
Exactly. So Dan, there's a question that everybody comes on this show has to answer, and obviously you're not going to be an exception this time. Is cereal considered a soup?
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The hard
Where did you
stuff.
come up with this? So
You know?
My answer is going to be it depends.
Okay.
Right. So think about like a soggy bowl of like Frosted Flakes.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
That's soup.
Okay.
But you think about like something like maybe Lucky Charms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the Pebbles brands, fruity, cocoa, certainly soup,
Yeah.
right? But you think about something thicker, probably not. But I'm going to go with the general answer is that in a short period of time, it becomes cereal soup.
Okay. I like it. I am an anti-cerealist soup, but I also don't eat cereal with milk very often. So I enjoy my cereal separately from my milk. So
Probably a very wise decision.
you know,
I haven't had cereal in a long time, but if I did, I think I might take that approach.
yeah, it's good. Nothing says like a nice cup of Frosted Flakes. It's just a nice crunch, you know? So that being said, if someone has maybe a good soup cereal combo recommendation for you, or if they need help with their temperature controlled reverse logistics, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, I think the best spot is LinkedIn. It's probably about as thorough as it gets for me in terms of a couple different ways. Omni-channel, right? Here are all the different ways that you could reach. That's the omni-channel communication way for me. I'm pretty active, both personally and from a business perspective. Yeah, that would be the place that I would recommend.
Awesome. You guys heard it here first. Dan's DMs are open for whatever anything within reason that you have.
That's right. I'm here.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. And thanks again for your understanding and flexibility. I appreciate it.
Anytime. You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on FreightWaves TV, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/running on ice. See you on the internet.
We're Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts. What makes us food shipping experts? Glad you asked. First, we've built a well-connected, highly reliable food-grade carrier network that significantly improves OTIF compliance, streamlines delivery management, and complies with food-grade requirements like trailer washouts and seal processes. We know what food shippers really need, a dedicated account team to offer critical after-hours support. Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts.